Thank you so much, leaders, for joining us on this podcast again. And this time I've got a very special guest with me. I've got Sayanta Ghosh joining us. Just to give a brief background of his, kind of an introduction of what he's doing and what the company is all about. I will take you through that. So Sayanta is the co-founder and CEO of nrev.ai, and he's building an AI-driven revenue operations platform that unifies data, workflows, and intelligence across the entire revenue stack of yours. He's passionate about eliminating tool sprawl and silos by enabling autonomous AI agents to orchestrate end-to-end revenue processes. Santa brings a strong founder mindset and a deep understanding of RevOps to help growth teams execute faster and scale smarter. I welcome you, Santa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Santa, first thing first, as a founder, when you look back, what was that problem or frustration in go-to-market or revenue operations that led you to build and rev?
This is a very broad question, but I'll try to kind of take this in different parts as much as possible. So we basically, to give you a little bit of a background about the founding team as well, we all started up from Mindtickle days. All of us were a part of Mindtickle, which was selling to salespeople, selling to marketing folks. I mean, the space that we were selling to was the same, GTM organizations. Yeah, the background is that we were a part of Mindtickle where we were building products, selling to GTM teams. And, I mean, as we entered the AI era, we realized that actually, even before the AI era, there was already a lot of tools in the GTM stacks of teams, right? People were handling 20, 25 tools even at a Series A level. Now, the inspiration behind building NRev actually came from us getting very deep into the roots of certain organizations. So initially in our journey, we were actually serving as service partners to certain organizations. And these were fairly large organizations where we were trying to build in systems that would unify their data, help them take actions, and build systems that was very adept to their teams. The way their sales teams work, the way their marketing teams could make action out of this data was what we were kind of building systems for. Very quickly, we realized that the reason why sales leaders or marketing leaders or the strategists behind these processes were not creating these automations, workflows, and systems was that there is a huge amount of complexity that is involved in unifying data, in creating workflows and creating automations. And you know, using tools in today's market like Clay and N that kind of help do this. So inevitably, we have seen that these organizations were either heading towards some agencies or it was the first one that we observed, like 20, 25 tools in their stack. So that's when we figured that, there is a need for something that helps a CRO, a CMO, let's say someone who's leading RevOps, be able to quickly experiment on certain systems that will work for their organizations, that is custom, that is extremely built based on the needs of how their team is structured to be able to function properly. And that's the whole inspiration behind NRev, to be able to build automations, to be able to build these systems that kind of get the insights, data, and everything together without too much technical knowledge.
Tell us a bit about your co-founders, like the founding team and all those people.
Very interestingly, we are actually a very close bunch of people. My co-founders are Rajat and Nikhil. Rajat, basically, I had spent the entire COVID staying with Rajat. He used to head business operations, that means everything operations in Mindtickle, including the revenue operations team, CS ops, sales ops, everything. And Nikhil, I was like a product leader for one of the verticals of Mindtickle. And Nikhil was my engineering counterpart. He was a director of engineering for that same stream. So we worked very closely together for 3.5 years, building a certain vertical of Mindtickle. And with Rajat, of course, we were like basically flatmates, roommates, everything together, right? That's how the team came together and started working.
Now, while we were going through the website and a lot of use cases of nrev.ai, you kind of position yourself as an autonomous GTM AI engineer for revenue teams. So in simple terms, what does the platform do? And what part of the GTM engine does it replace or augment?
All right. So basically, like the GTM engineering term is fairly new to the market, right? This has come with using AI in multiple ways along the entire revenue or buyer journey, right? So what it helps, or what is GTM engineering? Let me kind of come from that and why we call ourselves, let's say, an autonomous GTM engineer. GTM engineering typically means being able to build systems and automations that are in the way you want to build it. So, for example, my inbound funnel could look very different from your inbound funnel, although we might be targeting the same persona, same market, right? Our teams work differently. Our team structures are different. So, GTM engineering evolved because we have seen a huge shift away from more prescriptive tools to how people want to kind of make sure that their systems are customized to the way their team functions, right? So these GTM engineering typically means that you want to set up these systems so that each and every part and cogs and wheels are moving together so that your team specifically is able to get the most out of all the data and insights that are available to you. One, this spans across the GTM funnel. I mean, we can look at it right from the area of TAM creation or evaluating which customers might fall within our ICP. Who, signals, then figuring out who are in market for our tools, the entire outbound sequencing, your warm outbounds, referrals, etc., and directly to customer retention as well. So when we look at the entire funnel, there are challenges, there are problems, there are different kind of systems you want to keep in place, and we built nrev to be able to solve all of these different cogs and wheels along this entire revenue journey. So why we call ourselves autonomous GTM engineer is that nrev allows people to just discuss with an AI and then build out a deterministic system that would solve any part of the problem throughout this revenue journey. Now, one quick clarification here. As we move further and deeper into the AI journey, as we see, GPTs, Claudes, all of these evolving, one of our common complaints is always going to be hallucination, is always going to be unpredictability in behavior of AI. And we definitely don't want that in our GTM systems. We have extremely sacrimonious systems of record, extremely, things that we keep as almost holy for ourselves, right? And we don't want unpredictable systems working on it. So the way NREV works is while there is AI on the side of brainstorming, on the side of planning on how you want these systems to be configured, the ultimate systems that are designed are extremely deterministic. That means you can not only know exactly what steps are going to happen and how it's going to interact with different platforms of yours, but you're also able to go in and audit at every step what has happened and how, if there was any kind of an anomaly, then why that anomaly happened even after following every single rule that you've kept in place.
Got it. There's a lot of mind that has gone behind it. And you're kind of integrating a lot of things, helping so many,
Yeah.
companies all
I mean,
across.
yeah. And very importantly, like basically, when we look at AI, there are two very common buzzwords. One is agents,
Mm,
right? And agents are really good at thinking, at being able to bring context as to what is happening in your system, what is happening in your pipeline. We were able to couple that with a deterministic system, which is able to take action on that entire amount of thinking and that brainstorming that you've done with AI.
So, we see many companies use multiple tools across CRM, marketing automation, and data enrichment and outreach. So, what are those pain points that nrev.ai eliminate by unifying these workflows?
Yeah, very interesting question. I think I'll actually go through some anecdotes to kind of get to this. So one of our earliest customers was this cybersecurity customer who was, of course, like they were at a Series A level, and of course, at that level, you want to continuously experiment with what is working, what is not working for you. Let's say as an outbound channel,
Mm,
right? One thing that we noticed is they were using a ton of tools. Like they were using this signal based tools. They were using Sixth Sense and Warmly, if I remember correctly. They were using, of course, like BDR routing tools. They were using separate tools for, of course, like your entire email management, LinkedIn management, campaign management, etc. What tends to happen is that, say, if you have five different types of campaigns, one based on, let's say, signals, the others based on, let's say, some kind of cybersecurity news that you're getting, some kind of event that is happening, etc., etc. Typically these systems, when they don't talk to each other, you tend and I remember there was this one person who had written back to their CEO saying that I have been touched with multiple campaigns which
mm,
have completely different contexts at any given point in time, right?
mm.
And although that is like, I mean, today it might sound embarrassing, but it happens very, very commonly. So when these systems don't talk with each other, you're trying to do different types of campaigns from different systems, and you're using like, let's say, n different types of processes to kind of keep track of these systems. It's very easy to lose track, and it's very easy to often fall into that tool mesh where you're able to even figure out what is the ROI from any of these things that I'm doing. It's important that your systems talk to each other, the data talks to each other, and you have an unified buying journey for whoever's in market, or even you're building for awareness, or you're kind of whoever's evaluating you and your competitors. So this journey needs to be unified just to make sure that your discussions and your conversations and your messaging is coherent with where that person is along that funnel.
I got it. So this was one use case. Would like to, kind of maybe love to hear from you one more use case where a GTM team deployed nrev.ai and saw an immediate impact on the pipeline or productivity.
Yeah. So one of our very commonly used use cases is one in which you're able to track which accounts your competitors are selling to today.
Yes.
It sounds a little magical and outlandish, but it's absolutely possible to track. If you're using AI the right way, you're able to track that. And it turns out magical in terms of results, at least. So we were selling to this, again, a GTM focused tool, which sold to sellers, and they were like enterprise oriented. This typically works really well when you have like anything more than a 2 month sales cycle, because during that time, what happens is these, any seller is typically engaging with their buyers wherever they find them. So if it's an event, they would want to attend it. If there's any kind of a post by this buyer, they will want to butter them up by reacting, commenting on them, etc. If there's any kind of article, etc., anything of that sort, they want to be out there up front in front of them. These are small signals that you can continuously track. So what you're doing in this is basically you have a set of uh, account executives, sales reps, and BDRs of your competitors. And you're constantly tracking what kind of interaction they're doing with your target personas. And once you get those breadcrumbs of data, then you're basically accumulating them week over week to see exactly where the heat map lies, which are the accounts that they're continuously engaging with. And that gives a brilliant opportunity to just get
Yes.
in, replace your competitors, play the right battle card, and win that very quickly. So I'm talking about like 12-month. Typically, if a company has like a 12-month sales cycle, we have seen certain deals convert within 2 months because the buyer was already aware their competitors had done all the difficult job of educating them, telling them why they need a tool like that. And then this guy came and replaced that tool with just the right battle cards and won.
This is very interesting. And this solves a very real problem, actually.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about one, but one very interesting thing is that with all these, now 50 plus customers that we work with, we have seen that the best strategies actually come from the customers. We
Hmm.
are just lucky to be able to kind of see them build out these amazing workflows. And then kind of, again, we have the hot chair to see, what kind of results they are bringing. And typically we like to even kind of throw this out into our communities and wherever we do events as to, what are the strategies that are working and really are different and innovative from actual customers implementing these workflows and deploying them to get results.
And one of the major challenges for companies is also to define and operationalize their ideal customer profile and target them more accurately. So, how does NREV AI help teams do that?
Right. So this is something that, like, I'll say there's some help that people get from NREV, but to be very honest, this is something that is a little more subjective in nature, requires conversations, requires, really getting your hands dirty. So while NREV gives you a very good visibility into your CRM, as in you can use your CRM to do any kind of analytics, go through your entire, let's say, Fireflies, Fathom recordings, figure out what are the common themes that you're having a discussion with. It is very difficult to say that a tool will help you identify an ICP.
Hmm.
However, there are certain instances where we've seen NREV work really well. For example, there was this customer who was trying to set up a signal based outbound approach. Now, signal based outbound approach is a loosely thrown around word. People today just kind of implement very commercialized signals like a tech stack or a funding signal or a job signal to kind of send out outbound, right? But I am talking about extremely specific and very, very punchy outbound. What I mean by that is you're not acting on a single signal. You are basically judging the situation of a company in which they would have a problem or a need for an offering like yours. Right. So
Hmm.
it is defined by multiple scenarios, multiple signals that you get out of these small fragments of data, which come together ultimately to say that a signal based outbound is happening. Now, why I bring this up when you ask the ICP question is that this customer of ours were able to analyze at what situation a customer really becomes really feels the need for an offering like this
Hmm.
and starts to go out in the market to evaluate some of these offerings.
Hmm.
So these are basically high level analysis of their initial discovery calls for both win as well as loss kind of customers. So it's not a typical win loss analysis, but it's like kind of analyzing to see what is the buyer's mind space or the buyer's situation
Yeah.
that they are in when they progress through the deal versus when they drop off at discovery. So this is something that is commonly seen happening across different customers on India.
Right. And we usually see that, this data quality and messy CRM records, they slow down the revenue teams. How does your platform continuously clean, enrich, and structure GTM data? And what business impact does it create?
Right. So I'll talk about this from two different nuances. The first is very simply, let's if even if we leave aside enrichment and we leave aside, let's say, the kind of depth of knowledge or understanding you have about an account or any lead, let's even talk about just the chaos that is typically present in a CRM. I mean, I remember this one customer came and said that, one of our biggest problems is that before we plan out a quarter, typically we see that our pipeline is $3 million. By the end of the quarter, we come into a realization that much of this 3 million did not even get to discovery. Whereas there were one or two other deals which converted that 3 million, but we
Yeah.
had no clue that they would close, right? So I think there's a very important aspect to having visibility of
Hmm.
just that structure in which you want to keep your data.
Yeah.
So I think, and in the AI world, it has kind of come to, at least in a lot of companies that I have seen, has come to very good fruition when they connect all of these systems pretty autonomously, in the sense that if you have, let's say, your Fireflies, your Gmail, your Slack connected through some system, I'm not even going to say nrev,
Huh.
but through some system to your CRM, then you pretty much have a visibility of your touch
Yes.
points, if not anything else. And I'm probably missing out on one or two, like your marketing campaigns, a tool like an Instantly, etc. But you at least do not miss out on customers and suddenly see a deal appearing 15 days before the end of a quarter. So I think that one thing is very important, to have a visibility of your touch points
Hmm.
and to have a visibility of what is my TAM or what is my target market for this quarter, etc.
Hmm.
And then comes the enrichment part. I think that is a fairly simple game. A lot of tools like Clay would also solve that, because enrichments is again pretty much commoditized in the market. But
Hmm.
the way in which we've seen nrev being used is these auto enrichment beats. Right. So, for example, when there is a movement across a certain stage, I want some more information to be auto filled in. Let's say, whenever a deal moves from discovery to a demo, I need to know each and every stakeholder who's there in that account and automatically populate everything about them, or a certain research template about them.
Hmm.
Whenever there is a meeting for a salesperson, they need to get prepped with a certain amount of research done for anyone they're meeting. Certain use cases that we've seen which are very easily set up, they're already available on nrev if anyone wants to try. But yeah, ultimately that enrichment bit is pretty commoditized. I think the important bit is also kind of making sure all the systems are connected through some intermediary layer like an n10 or nrev, which kind of makes sure that you have visibility of your pipeline.
Yeah, I kind of started laughing inside because I was kind of thinking that people were dependent on these salespeople to put in information in the CRM to identify which deal
Oh,
is going to
those
convert.
days are gone. Yeah.
तभी वो 3
Yeah,
billion
I
हुआ.
think yeah, I have seen this not just in one or two companies. Somehow this also becomes a flex for sales reps.
Yeah.
I've seen certain sales reps actually going and saying that, I don't know how we're going to close this quarter. And then in the last 15 days, then convert two or three deals that get their quota through. I don't know what happens here, but it's also a flex or whatever it is. I think today we are at a stage when we don't have to rely on humans to do these things for sure. If at least the basic integrations and the, workflows are set up. Yeah.
So, Shanta, if we see the early stage startups versus the scaling companies, what are the most common use cases that you see today, like for nrev?
Uh, Actually, we see very different use cases for like early stage companies to, let's say, a late stage company, right? I hope you don't mind, Rishikesh, if I'm turning this completely on its head.
Hmm.
But early stage companies, like everyone, like even your tech person is concerned about probably a pipeline, right?
Yes.
Like everyone's trying to figure out, like, how do we create a market? How do we kind of bring about awareness. So you're constantly experimenting. And at this stage, it is very important to throw everything at the wall and figure out what sticks. So you're trying out LinkedIn, you're trying out Slack, you're trying out Reddit, you're trying out SEO, AEO, whatever comes is possible for you to try out. Right. And actually, one of the reasons why your tool bloat starts happening is because at this stage, you're trying out everything, and for everything, you want to buy a point solution. That's one of the problems that we definitely wanted to solve. That let's say if you want to try out Reddit as a channel tomorrow, you don't have to buy a Taplio or some social listening tool, right? You will be able to set up your own workflows and get this going and like get results early. For every experiment that you have, you need to just make sure that even if you're failing fast. Typically, they're like 20 different channels you can explore at every like 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100. There are different channels that will work for you. Whenever you're transitioning from a 0 to 1 to a 1 to 10, you need to probably reconfigure what has been working and figure out how you get more scale to it. So that's one perspective that we've seen very commonly amongst early stage startups. When we go to a little more mature, like scaled up startups, and yeah, then a number of things come in. Like people become a problem, right? You want more processes, you want more visibility, you want more, you know, visibility for the team as well. Like every sales rep should have certain amount of visibility, but not too much so that they're confused. So those kind of things start coming in. People start focusing a little more on processes. People start focusing a little more on the sanity of data that you have, predictability of your pipeline, predictability of the loss of your pipeline. All those things become slightly more important. So you're typically working more on having these robust pipeline setup rather than experimenting very quickly. So a typical use case on the early stage startups would be trying out all these hacky ways. Like, for example, the competitor one I told you, the signals one, probably, decoding who's visiting their websites, continuously trying all of these things every week, 2 or 3 experiments, to figure out, what can create their pipeline. In later stages, some of the workflows that become very important is because the bulk of data as well. And apart from setting up systems, then for you, it's important to figure out which person who probably existed in a company that has used my product is moving to a new company, and that becomes a new lead. Because I have like a CRM full of data, that becomes more of a pipeline building activity.
Got it. This is pretty clear. And what about the enterprise level companies, like companies which are mature, they have, so-called set processes. What happens in their case?
So yeah, this will come just from my opinion because we don't sell to very, very large companies. And that's a conscious call because it requires, I mean, being a platform provider, it requires a little bit of solutionizing and actually getting hands dirty with services to get into very large enterprises. For example, the most successful companies and enterprises would be people like Palantir who have deployed these, forward deployed engineers kind of roles, right? So we don't get into that sphere as much. But from my understanding of, we used to serve these kind of customers through services before this thing. So there, I think things are very slow. It's very difficult to steer that big of a ship in a different direction. It requires a lot of approvals, lot of these processes to be gone through to be able to take even a 1 or 2 major decisions on this. So typically, yeah, as I mentioned, things are slow. Things are a little more process oriented. Like in even so, for example, I remember this one organization where we were just getting into the account planning bit, account planning for both like new accounts as well as expansions of existing accounts. There is a lot of like, so for example, you want to kind of try out a lot of different types of account plans, hand it over to your sales reps, see what they are running with, what they're not running with, do those experiments, and probably in 2 quarters, you get to a state where you have a certain systematic account plan being created for these reps, and then you iterate on it. So you're not taking on huge initiatives, but you're taking on fairly meaningful but like medium-sized initiatives, and you're trying to get that solved in 2 or 3 quarters.
Got it. Now, what are the measurable outcomes do customers typically see after implementing nrev.ai? If you could tell the main KPIs affected.
Right. So I'll actually look at this question in a little bit of a different way. The way we measure success in a given account are 2 or 3 ways. One, your systems bloat and your cost for systems come down by a lot, right? By cost, I mean both money and time spent on them. Typically, with some of our early customers, and we are not too late into our journey either, so some of our early customers who have use NREV for almost everything that they try have replaced like more than 15 odd tools in their stack. Now that is a is a success that we honestly are very proud of, because that way you're reducing the cost of maintenance of these tools and cost of management of these tools, as in the time spent on them, as well as the amount. Like I remember this company that I'm talking about had spent more than $60,000 a yearly basis on tools, just by cutting down those 15, 17 odd tools. Now there you become more efficient in terms of the strategies what you want to deploy and the experiments that you want to deploy without having this extra cost. That for sure is one of the metrics that we love to track more than anything else. And the second thing is, I mean, it's very difficult for workflows to kind of track how much pipeline it's generating or how much efficiency it's creating, because a lot of these are experiments. There is no before and after because you're trying these things out for the first time. But I would say that, like I mentioned, one of the this competitor thing, the competitor workflow reduced the sales cycle brought in by this competitor flow from 12 months to 2 months, right, on an average. I think they have now gone through three very large enterprise deals through this one workflow itself. And they've realized that the time that requires, I mean, time it takes till conversion is extremely low as compared to other deals. So yeah, I mean, the KPIs are very varied on the customer side because you're implementing almost anything and everything. But for us, it's very important to be able to give the power to the customer to be able to try all these things, different things out without having to spend their time, energy, and money on, plethora of tools that are there.
And what I can think of is that because of this intelligence that the tool provides, it also reduces the leakage. Like, you kind of get in very relevant customers picked up at the right time, or you can prevent, customers from falling off, from the pipeline. I think this adds a lot of
Absolutely.
value. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the places where leakage became a big gain was the inbound funnel that people set up. So on nrev, you can track your website visitors both in terms of individuals as well as companies. And what you get to see is not just these cold people who seemingly have turned cold, still kind of appearing on your website, and that becomes a signal to re-engage. And also, there are very simple but very effective things like there's this one RevOps person who I think has a team of not more than 10 people. But you often tend to have salespeople just forgetting to follow up on different deals,
Yes.
right? So he just had a simple workflow that said that if there's a lag in reply of a salesperson for 2 days, whether the counterparty has replied or the same party has forgotten to follow up, there'll always be a reminder sent to them on Slack. So even these simple things like help make sure that you're kind of aiding your sales team or aiding your GTM team in every way possible, so that they're not kind of going through all the leakages.
Right. And now at the last, for all the revenue leaders who are watching this podcast, if they are evaluating, whether to adopt nrev.ai, what are a few questions that they should ask themselves?
Right. So I think when more than nrev.ai, I would say that when you're looking to probably evaluate how you want to bring in more with AI, you want to like typically ask yourself, what are the five different types of motions that I would want to try in my quarter or the next quarter?
Yeah.
And how much like people plus tools do I need to kind of try out these five experiments?
Yeah.
Especially if you're early stage, then experiments matter a lot, or motions matter a lot, or channels matter a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm just talking from that perspective. Then you probably would want to kind of also figure out that, okay, if I was using workflows instead of, which could be nrev, and again, like I will not restrict to nrev only, but if you are using workflows versus tools, then how much flexibility do you get, and how much cost saving do you have in terms of the time and energy that you spend on these different tools, one evaluating, getting them adopted, etc., instead of just kind of building out your own systems. I think that archaic build versus buy debate has right now turned on its head because of AI. These systems that work hand in hand in the way you want it to work have literally made building easy. Then it kind of makes a lot of more sense to kind of figure out what systems work for you, what are the experiments that you want to try based on your goals, and the way you want to kind of make them actionable, those experiments. So now I think that becomes a good question to kind of go ruminate back again on, like whether you want to buy instead of build.
And there's another question, like, can you talk around, a few interesting objections that you'd have got from the customers, like while you are trying to pitch them or, kind of selling to them? Interesting objections, like.
Yeah, I think some are very new, and I'll talk about them. So yeah, I'll actually talk about some that might not actually be some of the very common objections to buying a platform for GTM. Certain times So what has happened in the GTM market is a lot has shifted from annual upfront payments to more credit based or usage based payments. Right now, there are new fears and new objections towards credit based payments as well. While people understand that it's more flexible, I'm not committing to this one thing for 1 year upfront and not having to pay this large amount right upfront. But even for credit based systems, I think people have burnt their fingers a lot in terms of sudden consumption of credits while trying to build something, etc. Right. So some of the objections that we've got is, are there any guardrail safeguards against me kind of just running through my money if I'm trying to kind of build something? How can you do that? Do something to help me out in this, right? So these are the new payment with the new pricing strategies that the world is shifting towards. These are certain new objections that are coming about. But ultimately, I think the major objections are pretty much around being able to build out these systems and the friction or the learning curve that is there to build out these systems. That, what kind of help, what kind of support will I get in terms of building these systems out? And of course, now people that are realizing the value of building your own systems take a little more of a plunge, but it's always a question that arises in people's minds.
Now, I've got another question. So let's suppose nrev.ai is working with two competitor companies. Like both of them have kind of similar kind of ICP. Do they also get such kind of a doubt कि कहीं मेरा data जो है वो दूसरे competitor के
Not really. I think now that people have worked with SaaS so much, they understand the multi-tenancy bit quite a bit. That
Hmm.
your data resides in a certain tenant and your competitor's data resides in a certain tenant. We do try to build about a learning culture in one of our the community that we have, where we have people highlight different kinds of very innovative workflows that they have done in a month. They are aware that their similar companies to them might also be in that community. But I feel that it's a day and age that we live in where especially GTM teams live in a lot of FOMO of what they might be able to do, but they're not aware of it. So these learnings actually make things a lot simpler for the teams. So I feel like collaboration has become more of a game than having that data leak to competitors being more of a threat.
Thank you so much, Santa, for joining us and talking us candidly around the product that you have built for all the revenue teams across the globe. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights.
Thank you so much, Rishikesh, for having me here.